It is overtime here again at Old Favorite Friday, and we are continuing the conversation about Boddingtons Pub Ale. This is listed many different ways, British Pale Ale, it's listed as a bitter. This beer was recommended by Dustin Jeffers. Dustin was on Old Favorite Friday. He gave me a couple different options of beers he wanted to do, and Boddingtons was one of the ones he wanted to do. So this is to you, Dustin. Thank you for recommending this. This is a beer that introduced so many people to British beers. You go into a British pub in the U.S., and you will probably find this on draft, on Nitro, and it's just a staple. It's a staple of a British pub in the U.S. Once again, an introductory beer to the style, and I think it turned a whole world of people onto this style of beer. And the style of British Pale Ale, the style of bitter, gave way and opened up the entire craft brewing scene in the U.S. to feature. I mean, you were talking a little bit about the yeast using this, and you can definitely mention that here in a minute or so. But getting into the hop flavors to balance out malt. And this is not a beer I drink on a regular basis. I've had this beer many, many times over the years. It's not my favorite beer in the world, I'll be honest with you. This is not one of those like top tier, oh my God, you have to go out and get this beer right now, like so many of the beers that we talk about. But this definitely deserves its place in Old Favorite Friday for how classic it is, the fact that it is still a very good beer, and kind of what has opened up in the craft beer world because of it.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, well, I wasn't the biggest Boddingtons drinker. My brother used to love Boddingtons. And as you mentioned, the yeast, I don't know how 100% accurate this is, but a lot of people claim that the London 3 that people now use for hazy IPAs started from Boddington. So it's got a lot of history in many ways that have to do with beer and even craft beer. And the beer itself is a great beer. I can see where we see it as pale ale or bitter, because it does have that nice, just pale amber hue. And you get a lot of that malty sweetness. It almost reminds me more of like a Helles or a Pilsner in terms of the crackery level. I don't get like that crispiness you get from a lager or something like that, but I wouldn't say this goes to necessarily brown bread. I would say it's more of like a toasted white bread, but it really works well, and the sweetness, or even I should say the creaminess that you get from that nitro treatment kind of leans more into that malt to give you this almost sweet, almost vanilla-like character to me.
Yeah, the malt flavor here is real nice. There's a little bit of bitterness in the back end, just enough to balance the beer out. There's some really nice flavors in there, very subtle flavors, ones that you just mentioned. This is a beer that a lot of people claim that you just cannot replicate it in a can. I think this is a good beer in a can no matter what, but whether or not, if I was trying these side by side, I might get a difference out of the draft versus a can. So I encourage you, if you hadn't had this in a while and you have the access to it, go get one at a pub if you can. Make sure that, ask them when's the last time they cleaned the lines. Unfortunately, a lot of those draw systems don't get cleaned out enough, but that's a story for a different time. But it's a solid beer. I really enjoy this style. I wish that we saw more bitters, traditional bitters, English pale ales here in the States. We just don't. We featured a couple of them on Old Favorite Friday in the past, and it's a really, really great style because it has so many of the things you were talking about. It's having those kind of lager flavor profiles that are really clean and crisp and flavorful, with a nice hop profile to go along with it.
Yeah, and what I think is cool about this beer as well, especially calling it like a British pub ale, a lot of time, at least in this country, and some friends of mine, you assume like dark mild or stout. There's certain tends to trend towards, if it's English, it's darker. And while this is maybe darker than a blonde ale slightly, it's not a dark beer by any stretch.
No.
So it kind of shows there's more versatility even in the pub ale, or, you know, some people would call it real ale or cask ale style, that you don't have to just fit into these like 2 or 3 boxes because it's British.
Yeah, no, there's a whole wild world of beer out there. You know, we do pigeonhole, every Belgian beer tastes like bananas, right? Because people have had a lot of triples that have that overwhelming flavor profile to it. All German beers are lagers that are light in color, and that's just not true. There are right now craft breweries in England doing incredible beers that are in every single different style. We just don't have the privilege of getting those beers over here. So there's a lot of options out there. I'm sure people watching this right now, and I got this, remember when we did the Kolsch, which is another classic beer style that deserves a lot more respect, but we had multiple people say like, oh, that's not the best Kolsch, you got to get the best Kolsch. That's not the best representation. I'm sure somebody is going to watch this, and maybe Phil from the Britain Yankee Pubcast, he's going to go, what are you talking about? That's not the best beer to have in this. I'm not saying it is. I'm not a aficionado on the style, but of the beers that are available in this style, I still think it's a solid beer that you can be proud to bring to a party, that you can absolutely fall back on and ordering in a pub if you're so lucky to have it there. But please tell us in the comments. Let us know what you think about this beer, and let's know what other beers, classic British beers, that we should be drinking, because that's style that we just have not explored a lot. We've done a lot of Belgians, we've done a lot of Germans, and obviously a ton of beer from the U.S. But we definitely want to be able to explore as much as possible within reason, because we have to go with what we can get here in the state of Florida. Ralph, you're the culinary guy. Tell me about food pairings for this beer.
Oh, so this would be interesting. I would, because you don't hear about it as much with beer, but I would definitely say like a grilled, if you're doing like a grilled fish or any kind of light, I would say like a summer salad, or even a summer like a pasta primavera. So I could see this pairing really well with anything with like a bright citrusy, or even like a slightly bitter green character, because that little bit of hop you get in the back end, and just like the freshness of the ingredients. That's why I mentioned like a nice grilled fish. Anything that I think has like a fresher character would work really well with this beer.
I also think it could go well with something like a sausage, like a bratwurst or something of that nature.
Yeah.
Even maybe like a mild Italian sausage with a little bit of fennel and flavors in there as well, because it has the body and the creaminess to go with something a little more fatty, but it also has kind of those subtle the kind of beer you imagine having with burgers and hot dogs, right? And I think they work in that vein as well. So everyone, thank you very much for checking in with us on Old Favorite Friday. This is the first Old Favorite Friday of 2024. We hope your New Year's has got off to a good start. And we hope to see you here next week for Old Favorite Friday. Cheers.
Cheers.